This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Death toll mounts in South Africa amid efforts to restore order after days of violence and looting. We update you on the unfolding security crisis in Afghanistan. And we look at how the effects of climate change are forcing some farmers in Kenya to abandon their traditional crops. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up over the next hour. In business, Ghana is set to launch its first digital currency. And in sports, South Africa aims to surpass Rio 2016 medal count at the Tokyo 2020 Games. We begin in South Africa, where the death toll from the violent protests there has risen to 72. This includes 10 people killed in a stampede during looting at a shopping center in Soweto. The South African government is trying to restore order after days of deadly violence, looting and destruction of property. Police say over 1,000 people have so far been arrested. CGTN's Asta Tal has the latest on that.
Over 2,000 soldiers have been deployed to the streets of Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal provinces with one mission: to help restore order. Days of looting and violence have already left dozens dead. Police say a majority died during stampedes.
We cannot allow anyone to make a mockery of our democratic state, and we have instructed the law enforcement agencies to double their efforts to stop the violence and to increase deployment on the ground.
South Africa's economy was already struggling to recover amidst the pandemic. Unemployment stood at 32.6% in the first 3 months of 2021. The government is now warning that the looting will only exacerbate the situation.
This looting and the violence will lead us to a point we don't really want to get to that situation. That is why we are saying it's not just law enforcement only. Law enforcement and leadership of communities. We must all step forward and say, looting cannot take place in our community. I'm calling on every community from the townships to the suburbs across Gauteng.
Gauteng province, the country's main economic hub, has witnessed widespread looting. This has left some business people feeling frustrated.
I'm a black-owned business and I have managed to create employment at least for 4 people. Now what is going to happen to all those people that were working here? I mean, it's not fair. We know the rate of unemployment is very high, but when we do things like this, then it becomes more higher.
The government is still working on gaining control of the security situation. Beyond arresting looters, Police Minister Becky Selly says 12 people are under investigation for inciting the violence. Asta Tal, CGTN.
Well, let's get more on that story now. We're now joined by Angelo Coppola in Johannesburg. Angelo, concerns are now mounting over the impact of the violence and looting in a number of areas in South Africa. What is the latest on the efforts to restore order there?
Well, look, we are starting to count the cost of the looting and the violence on the economic front, for example. SAPREF, the country's biggest oil refinery, just a little while ago announced a force majeure. They provide 30% of the country's refinery capacity to the country, and they're not going to be supplying any fuel to their retailer clients. They've stopped delivering fuel altogether, and that's going to lead to a little bit of a crisis because there's only one refinery that is operating at the moment, and that's between Sasol and Total. So that's going to be a major issue there. There is a pipeline between Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, but it's not entirely secure either, which means that we'll see fuel shortages in the coming months, weeks, in fact, and possibly days. As you know, that fuel drives the country's economy. The army deployments are underway and are starting to have an impact. As those troops move into areas like we saw yesterday in Alexander, for example, the looters disappear. They do return, but they aren't acting with the impunity that they were acting before while the police were in operation. So there seems to be some sense of order returning to some parts of the two worst affected provinces. We are also receiving more and more reports of communities who are banding together to protect their own assets and the assets of the community. It started in KwaZulu-Natal and it spread to Gauteng. Residents here in Soweto, for example, rallied to a call to protect a mall in Soweto last night. It worked. We're also seeing the taxi associations stepping into the breach and starting to work with local communities to protect community assets there, and also to do spot checks on vehicles that might be carrying suspiciously obtained goods, in other words, looted goods. So it looks like there's some movement in the right direction. Obviously, it's early days. We've heard there's been some activity on the southern or southeastern side of Johannesburg in a place called Vosloorus. About 15-20 minutes ago, there was another mall that was attacked there. So we'll keep you posted on what's happening there, Mahia.
And Angelo, casualty figures have also been steadily rising there. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, look, we know what the death toll is at the moment. We know what the injuries are as well. The latest data we have shows that in KwaZulu-Natal, for example, Netcare, which is their listed healthcare provider, reported 30 gunshot victims at their facilities. The company has also deployed around 30 emergency medical practitioners and operators to those hospitals to help out and to reduce the overflow of injured and wounded people that are coming in as a result of those looting and arson activities. We're going to watch whether those figures actually climb or drop as the soldiers now get more involved in helping the police to do their duties. So we do know that looting continues in some of those malls and warehouses, and stampedes like the one you mentioned earlier have been the source of injuries and deaths. We know about those 10 people who got killed in a mall in Soweto just yesterday. So we will be monitoring that quite closely. Mahia?
And finally, there are some suggestions that these acts of lawlessness are being coordinated. What more can you tell us? What have you been able to establish about this?
Well, look, at the moment, that's all speculation, conjecture, and in fact, to put it quite plainly, rumour mongering. The South African Police Services Minister, Bheki Cele, made some vague reference to a list of 10 people now referred to as the Dirty Dozen, whom they're watching. But as I said, until there's a legal action that's taken against those suspects and they're arrested, there's no basis, in fact, to point fingers in any direction. The political environment in the country at the moment is fractured and fraught. So attempting to identify alleged perpetrators without any evidence or any court procedures is simply going to add fuel to an already tense environment and situation that we have in South Africa at the moment, Mahia.
All right, Angelo, thank you very much for keeping us updated. CGTN's Angelo Coppola joining us live from Johannesburg. Moving on, Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa has extended the country's latest lockdown by 2 weeks, citing a rise in COVID-19 infections. He says the country aims to vaccinate 1 million people over the same period. Here is Mahia Mutua with the details from Harare.
Business hours will be restricted to between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. A dusk to dawn curfew will remain in force. Schools will stay closed and intercity travel prohibited for a further 2 weeks as Zimbabwe tries to stem a third wave of the pandemic. New cases have risen by 43% and 466 deaths have been recorded since July 1st. In a televised address on Tuesday evening, Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa said the highly contagious Delta variant was the most dominant strain, accounting for approximately 80% of new COVID-19 infections. Now, behind me is a vaccination center where there is a long queue indicative of the increased vaccine uptake. President Mnangagwa said during this lockdown, the vaccination drive will be scaled up and a target has been set to administer 1 million jabs over the next 2 weeks. By July 13th, 955,000 people had received their first dose and more than 619,000 people had been fully vaccinated. Mahia Mutua, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Zimbabweans in Harare, meanwhile, have been queuing for kilometers outside one of the capital's main hospitals. They hope to be vaccinated against COVID-19, but many fear that there are not enough jabs. This as the country is recording a huge jump in the number of new infections amid fears of a third wave of the pandemic. Nokutula Shabalala has more.
Andrew Ngwenya and his family traveled about 11 kilometers from their home to Parire Nyatwa, a major referral hospital. Here, COVID-19 vaccine doses are sometimes available. But by noon, the nurses often tell people to return home and try get the jab on another day.
I visited this, this major hospital, Parire Nyatwa Hospital. When I got there, the queue is like 5 kilometers. Even if you are interested in a jab, you can't stand that. Because I've been there like sometime around 8 at Parire Nyatwa, up to 12. Only maybe a few, maybe 30 people were saved. From 8 to 12. Even the staff as well. They are not all that encouraging, the way they do it as well. I think it's due to poor wages.
As a part-time pastor with a Pentecostal church, Ngwenya and members of his flock are now praying for divine intervention.
We are just now preaching to people and we are praying for people. Because there is no jab and people are now they are resorting to faith a lot and they are coming. And we are praying for them.
Zimbabwe has so far been using the 2 Chinese COVID-19 vaccines, Sinopharm and Sinovac, to inoculate its population. The country has received several batches of Chinese vaccines to ramp up its national vaccine program. The Southern African nation hopes to vaccinate at least 60% of its 15 million strong population to achieve herd immunity. But so far, only less than 1 million people have been vaccinated.
I was here as early as 3 a.m. I was on number 5. Now it's almost 8 a.m. They are telling us there's no first vaccine, it hasn't arrived. But in the news we're told that there's plenty of vaccine which has arrived in the country and is being distributed all over the country and across all provinces.
This is frustrating. Imagine this big hospital has no vaccines. It's shocking. People are desperate.
Zimbabwe is one of more than 14 African countries where the Delta variant is quickly spreading. The Southern African country has reported more than 70,000 COVID-19 cases and more than 2,200 deaths by mid-July. Nokutula Shabalala, CGTN.
6,000 health workers on the island of Zanzibar have begun receiving their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. The government has confirmed that it has begun administering doses of the Sinovac vaccine from China. CGTN's Isaac Lucando has more.
These vaccines were originally imported by authorities in Zanzibar as part of a promise to assist citizens who wanted to embark on the annual Muslim pilgrimage to Mecca. However, with host Saudi Arabia limiting pilgrims to only 60,000 of its own citizens this year, the decision was made to use the vaccines for health workers instead. The government of Zanzibar says it is carrying out the exercise in 2 phases, where a second phase will begin in 2 weeks. Authorities have not disclosed the number of doses imported or whether the vaccines have been purchased or given as aid from the Chinese government. Despite early opposition to vaccines and promoting herbal remedies instead, Zanzibar has signed up for the World Health Organization's COVAX initiative, where it expects to receive free vaccines. Like on the neighboring Tanzanian mainland, the Zanzibar government says that as a matter of policy, it will not force any of its citizens to take the vaccines. In February this year, Zanzibar's Vice President Saif Sharif Hamad died 3 weeks after confirming he had contracted COVID-19. Isaac Lucando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Well, let's revisit our top story in South Africa, where the death toll from violent protests there has risen to 72. This includes 10 people killed in a stampede during looting at a shopping center in Soweto. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
looting, destruction and general violence was the order of the day in Soweto on Monday. Soweto is one of South Africa's largest townships. Major malls here have been completely ransacked. ATMs ripped out of walls. Restaurants, bottle stores and clothing shops all left in tatters. The raging unrest started last Friday after former President Jacob Zuma started serving a 15-month term. His supporters took to the streets to demand his immediate release. The riots have so far left 72 people dead. 10 of those were found in a looted shopping center in Meadowlands, Soweto.
Just here in Meadowlands, at this shopping mall, 10 people died yesterday late afternoon and were discovered by the police at night out of a stampede. And I know that the families of those who died at the moment some of them wouldn't have even known that someone was part of the looting.
The Premier, who was conducting a walkabout in various affected areas in Gauteng, told the media that hundreds of people have already been arrested in the province. And that government and the business sector have started to count the losses, which are likely to run into billions. He, however, also acknowledged the government's slow response to the crisis.
I accept that in some instances you have had a situation where there were not enough officers on the ground, or the response was very, very slow, or it was reactive rather than proactive. I accept that, but this is the issues we have been sorting out in the last 24 hours, just strengthening police response.
Premier Makura added that as violence continues, the province's COVID-19 vaccination program has slowed down and oxygen delivery has also been affected.
We cannot afford this. We cannot afford this. And this has to come to a stop.
Heavily armed South African National Defence Force soldiers are keeping a close watch on the developments. They've been deployed to assist the overstretched police. The National Prosecuting Authority has also announced that it is putting together a list of special prosecutors. The prosecutors have been instructed to oppose bail for all those associated with economic sabotage and public violence. Yulisa Njomela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, time for us to take a quick break. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program, we update you on the unfolding security crisis in Afghanistan. And we look at how the effects of climate change are forcing some farmers in Kenya to abandon their traditional crops.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Now, according to Pakistan's foreign ministry, this morning a bus carrying Chinese workers in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province plunged into a ravine after a mechanical failure resulting in leakage of gas that caused a blast. Further investigations are currently underway. According to preliminary reports, 9 Chinese nationals and 3 Pakistanis lost their lives. Meanwhile, in eastern China's Suzhou, authorities say search and rescue efforts have concluded after they found all 23 people who were missing after a hotel collapsed on Monday. Yang Chengxi has more.
A moment of silence from the rescue team after they pulled out the body of the last of 23 people buried under a collapsed 3-story hotel building. The more than 40 hours long rescue operation in there behind me wrapped up at about 9 a.m. on Wednesday. 17 of the buried victims were dead. Of the 6 survivors, 1 has returned home after receiving treatment, and 5 are now in a stable condition.
21 of the province's medical specialists have been deployed to the 9th People's Hospital of Suzhou. We have made sure each patient gets a dedicated team, and each severe patient has a specialized treatment plan.
The collapse on Monday afternoon broke the quietness of this old Suzhou neighborhood. Over 600 rescue personnel from Suzhou and 5 other nearby cities were dispatched here, together with equipment and search dogs. It was a delicate operation, and fearing further collapse, authorities decided against using large, bulky equipment. Instead, the bigger debris was lifted out by cranes, and rescuers used their hands when specialized equipment detected signs of life. Just some 200 meters from the scene is an elementary school, but there are no official reports of nearby buildings being affected. The cause of the accident is yet to be officially announced, but according to state news agency Xinhua, who spoke to the rescue command center, the collapse was likely the result of unauthorized building modifications. The provincial government has formed a team of investigators and detained at least 5 people, including the owner of the hotel, its engineering designer, and the construction manager. China's State Council has also announced on Wednesday that it will supervise the handling of this issue. Yang Chengxi, CGTN, Suzhou, Jiangsu Province.
Heavy fighting continues in Afghanistan as the Taliban sweeps across the country following military withdrawals by the United States and NATO. The Taliban says it has captured the strategic border crossing of Spin Boldak along the frontier with Pakistan. The group has claimed territory from the Afghan government as foreign forces stepped up their withdrawal in recent weeks. The Afghan government claims it has killed more than 260 Taliban fighters in efforts to retake lost ground, while the Taliban say they control over 85% of the country's territory. The police are blaming the militants for a bomb explosion in Kabul on Tuesday afternoon, which left at least 4 dead. Peace talks have so far made little progress, but efforts will reportedly continue this week to break the deadlock. Gao Yiming has more on the international efforts to bring about peace.
Afghanistan, a nation left on edge as foreign troops return home. The Taliban fighters are rapidly regaining control. It's claimed around a third of Afghanistan's 400 districts, securing major border crossings with Iran and Turkmenistan. The UN says since January, instability and violence have displaced 270,000 people in the country, and more may suffer if peace effort fails.
UNHCR warns that a failure to reach a peace agreement in Afghanistan and stem the current violence will lead to further displacement within the country, as well as to neighboring countries and beyond.
When I made the decision to end the U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan,
U.S. President Joe Biden has vowed to pull out American troops by August the 31st. He says Washington has achieved its goals in the region, and it's now up to the Afghan and regional leaders to bring about a political solution to the crisis. Ironically, earlier this month, a key Afghan airbase was looted just hours after the American troops' withdrawal without the knowledge of the commander of the Kabul government. Many Afghans say the U.S. pullout is causing greater trauma.
If Afghanistan is going toward destruction, America will be responsible. They came from the other corner of Earth to Afghanistan to eliminate terrorism. But terrorists are more active than before and are killing hundreds of our people every day.
China is urging the U.S. to fulfill its obligations of reconstruction and reconciliation in Afghanistan. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says all parties should work to prevent military escalation, and particularly an all-out civil war. Wang and his counterparts in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are now meeting in Tajikistan to discuss solutions. Members include China, India, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Afghanistan is an observer state. The organization's Afghanistan Contact Group was established in 2005 to promote peace in the country. In 2017, the member states relaunched the group to better support Afghanistan in the fight against terrorism, drugs, and other crimes, as well as facilitating its sustainable development. A joint statement on the current crisis expected following the talks in the Tajik capital of Dushanbe. Tajikistan has also called on its partners in the Russia-led Collective Security Treaty Organization to help bring peace to Afghanistan. And a new round of peace talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban is set to begin in Doha this week.
I think you'll see that the peace talks will resume soon, so all sides need to be patient and make a good plan to push the current situation in the direction of peace.
But peace is an unfamiliar concept to the generation of Afghans who were brought up in war, and the big question to them is when and how it will finally come. Gao Yiming, CGTN.
Returning to the African continent now, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's Prosperity Party won the most seats in Ethiopia's parliamentary election held last month. He is expected to form a government in September, but what will his priorities be and what expectations do citizens have? CGTN's Girum Chala explores this further.
The National Electoral Board of Ethiopia has already declared Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's Prosperity Party the winner of the 6th general elections of the nation. The party won 410 out of the 436 seats of parliament. People now expect the elected leadership to deliver on all fronts, including peace, economic growth, education, and more.
As the youth of the nation, we support Prosperity Party 100% and would like to see all kinds of changes for the party, especially in making Ethiopia a prosperous nation in Africa and the world. We expect them to finish the construction of our grand dam and generate power. I hope we will maintain unity.
What we expect from the Prosperity Party is addressing the skyrocketing prices on everyday items. People are being seriously affected by the ever-soaring prices. We elected a party believing that it will address all these issues.
I want the winning party to look at the youth of this country. Most of us are unemployed, and we want to change that status as soon as possible.
Over the next 5 years, Abiy's party has already set out plans to transform the nation. What is known as homegrown economic reform is set to take the country's economy to the next level by focusing on the mining, agriculture, industrial sectors, as well as the energy sector. This is, of course, alongside the Prime Minister's Green Legacy initiative of planting billions of tree seedlings every year. But the nation also prides itself for holding what the authorities have called the first free and fair election after decades of failed polls. The head of the Ethiopian National Electoral Board says the nation has achieved the formation of an independent electoral institution.
Above and beyond everything, all of our stakeholders have learnt a lot because they have passed through this election process with us. They have learned how to accept our decisions, even if they were not convinced. There were no shortcuts to this. This is how we are supposed to build an independent institution for the nation. Many things were new to us, but all is now behind us, and I would like to acknowledge the efforts of stakeholders for working with us and walking the talk with us for the country to see free and fair elections.
Still, an opposition boycott, the war in northern region of Tigray, ethnic violence and logistical challenge in some areas overshadowed the election. Voting did not take place in 3 of Ethiopia's 10 regions. The Electoral Board says it will stage elections in the remaining areas next September. Grumtala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Now, climate change has led some farmers in Kenya to change the crops they grow to ensure adequate earnings and harvest. Some have been forced to stop growing crops they had relied on for many years due to persistent challenges. CGTN's Nick Mudimba caught up with a farmer in Kenya who's enjoying the benefits of switching to fruit cultivation.
Kenya's North Rift has been known for many years as a leading producer of maize, but many farmers there are abandoning growing that crop. Dr. Nesmas Ngetich is a farmer and a university lecturer. He quit maize farming due to the difficulties he faced and is now fully focused on fruit farming.
We are currently in the, trying to spread the message of diversification because of the opportunities that most of these other plants give to farmers in terms of income. Corn production has been declining over years, and many growers have experienced a decline in production from maybe 30 bags an acre to 15 and like that. So, and then also the market prices and the free, market for the importers. That one has brought down the cost of the prices of maize.
The transition has given Dr. Ngetich financial freedom in ways he didn't expect. He's growing a variety of fruits at his farm and is now more focused on selling fruit tree seedlings so as to encourage other farmers to emulate him.
Fruit production gives a big opportunity, both for local and for international market. The prices of fruits in the market, the common market, is good, it's high, especially for growers. Because if you produce for avocados, for apples, for papaya, for, name them, passion fruits, tree tomatoes, their prices are relatively higher.
His new venture has placed him on the international map as more farmers across Africa and beyond are ordering for seedlings. But the demand, according to him, is overwhelming at times.
A client in Ghana who requires 250,000 runners of strawberries. But currently, we tell them we are still supplying other places. Of course, we are trying to bulk and probably provide. So there's an opportunity. So there's an opportunity in production and also in the nursery.
As a farmer, he wants to engage in sustainable farming that will also address nutritional needs of the local population.
He's been able to cater for his family and for himself, and also he's been able to pay more than 5 workers to maintain the gardens. Right now, his main focus is to go higher and, of course, increase the acreage of his fruit farming. For now, he's happy with what he's got. And, of course, productivity is his endgame. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Uasin Gishu County, Kenya.
You're watching Africa Live. Here is a quick reminder of our top stories this hour. In South Africa, the death toll from violent protests has risen to 72. This includes 10 people killed in a stampede during looting at a shopping center in Soweto. The government is trying to restore order after days of deadly violence, looting and destruction of property. Police say over 1,000 people have so far been arrested. Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa has extended the country's latest lockdown by 2 weeks, citing a rise in COVID-19 infections. He says the country aims to vaccinate over 1 million people over the same period. And in eastern China's Suzhou, authorities say search and rescue efforts have concluded after they found all 23 people who were missing after a hotel collapsed on Monday. The more than 40 hours long rescue operation wrapped up at about 9 a.m. on Wednesday. 17 of the buried victims were dead. And coming up in the business, Ghana is set to launch its first digital currency.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Time for the business. In Ghana, the government is looking to pilot its central bank digital currency in 2 months' time. Also known as the ECD, the digital currency is expected to operate in a sandbox in the interim before being introduced to the general public as legal tender for financial transactions. First Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Maxwell Opoku Afari, says the ECD is crucial, especially following COVID-19, as the outbreak has quickened the drive towards a cashless economy. Opoku Afari says the pilot phase will be determined by how easily the public accepts the digital currency, as well as how soon the operational dynamics come to the fore. Meanwhile, the Egyptian Stock Exchange has begun trials of a new system that aims to improve accuracy, increase trading volumes, and boost foreign investment in Egyptian shares. The bourse is considering introducing an auction system to determine closing prices, a method used by some of the world's biggest exchanges. Reporting from Cairo, here is CGTN's Yasser Hakim.
The Egypt Stock Exchange current closing price system is based on the average share price throughout the trading session each day. However, the new mechanism under testing is the auction one that will determine the closing price for the day.
The new pricing system calculates the average price in the last half hour of trading. And not just the last half hour, but an average from every hour is considered during the day. The main element, though, is the average of the last hour to calculate a price that will open the market on the following day. The bourse is restructuring regulations to refresh the market and make it highly efficient and professional. This reduces manipulation and gives more accurate assessments of each share price.
Egypt's stock exchange has been suffering from lack of activity and low foreign investment volumes. Furthermore, a number of initial public offerings or IPOs that would have stimulated the market has been postponed from 2020 till the end of 2021. This is to shore them from the contraction in the market that has been caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Meanwhile, officials have finalized 3 simulation sessions to test the new mechanism, which they hope would improve investor confidence. But some traders are worried.
We are surprised about how quickly they want to apply the new pricing mechanism. We need more time to understand the system and study it thoroughly. The haste by officials has made us traders a bit worried. Overall, it is a good initiative for the market, but we need to understand it clearly, all the technical details, to be able to apply it in our work.
The EGX board says it's addressing all concerns and is planning to introduce the auction pricing system beginning in August. Yes Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
South Africa's commercial property sector remains in limbo as the country battles a third wave of COVID-19. Most corporate employees have been told to work from home since the first hard lockdown last year. A year later, many of these company buildings are still empty. CGTN's Sumitra Naidu now tells us how this is impacting the economy.
Commercial property landlords lost over $2 billion in rental income during April and June 2020. Property owners agreed to write off the arrears as COVID relief.
And then some of the landlords were saying, well, I can't carry on paying the bond and the levies, I'm going to sell. So the cheaper ones seem to be doing a lot better, but we did do deferred payments with them.
But relief efforts are running thin on the ground. Most relief schemes have stopped.
We're basically relying on daily sales, which has put us in a terrible position to make rental. We are behind, but we have been in negotiations with our landlord all the time, just keeping up to date to say, okay, we can do this amount or that amount. And I think showing the willingness that we are able to try and pay something, she's been lenient with us. The sales has also dropped drastically, from what we used to do to what it is now. It's not good at all.
Employees of big companies, including the banks, were forced to work from home last year. A year later, they're being told to continue working from their homes until further notice. Some companies have even cancelled their leases, leaving scores of office blocks empty.
The Hyatt Hotel here in Rosebank has been closed since last year. This hotel caters for mostly business people coming into the CBD. There's still no clarity on whether this hotel will ever open again.
It's not an easy one because a lot of people are still struggling out there. I haven't had to go to the housing tribunal to report anybody because you kind of work with each other. People need accommodation. It hasn't been easy, and what can one say is that companies are dismissing their employees. I actually don't know how it's going to improve, not with the lockdown and with so many people being affected by the COVID.
Credit data shows nearly 500 businesses have entered business rescue under the Companies Act since April last year. Heavily invested landlords will suffer the most, with little or no return on investment, and as the pandemic shows no signs of slowing. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
To Nigeria now, which continues to struggle with getting rid of monthly electricity subsidies which run into millions of dollars. The International Monetary Fund has already raised the red flag over Nigeria's resumption of petrol subsidies, describing them as dangerous to the economy. Reporting from Nigeria's capital, Abuja, here is CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam.
Mohammed Ibrahim is a frozen foods trader and distributor in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. He sells a variety of proteins, including fish and chicken. His business is largely dependent on electricity supply to run effectively. That means he has to pay a high tariff, which has resulted in high operational costs.
The reason why prices are going up is not only electricity, and also the government did not take the right approach towards commercializing the electricity. Our market is paying heavily on electricity. That is why we are getting light. You know very well now the billing is no longer a single billing. Depends on the area you are and the numbers of hours you have light on daily basis.
Electricity consumers in Nigeria have been lamenting over tariff hikes since 2020. The increases are part of government's plan to gradually eliminate subsidy regime. Nigeria spends nearly $73 million monthly to subsidize electricity tariffs, far less than over $121 million spent in previous months.
To give you an idea of how huge it is, our oil revenues are less than 2 trillion naira in a year. So you can imagine we're spending a significant part of our oil revenues to subsidize the electricity market. Having said that, one of the reasons why you have a subsidy is also because the operators in the sector are not very efficient. So even though you are charged a tariff, the ability of the distribution companies to collect the revenues is quite low. We are averaging about 60% collection.
Since 1999, more than $16 billion has gone into boosting electricity supply in Nigeria, but distribution capacity still hovers around 4,700 megawatts, grossly insufficient for the nation's 200 million strong population. A recent report by the World Bank says Nigeria has the most number of people with no access to electricity, and this cost the nation economic annual losses of $29 billion.
10 to 12 million customers are the ones benefiting from this subsidy, not everybody. See a lot of benefits when government decides to allow tariff reviews happen as and when it should happen. It would be painful at first for a lot of the consumers. There are a lot of people that can't pay their bills. It will be very painful. But if we continue in this trajectory, it will cause far more pain. So it's better that people realize what it is costing them, costing government, and at the end of the day, costing their pockets and their children, because these are debts that the government will pay at some point.
Nigeria's power sector continues to face a myriad of problems, including infrastructure constraints and tariff issues. Experts suggest improving baseline power supply with data-driven innovations and enhancing sector governance would help boost investors' confidence. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And here's what's still to come on Africa Live. The South African city of Cape Town rolls out the country's first fully electric bus service.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Canada, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's take you to South Africa, where the country's first fully electric buses have begun operating in the city of Cape Town. The vehicles, which were launched by a private bus operator, will be part of a feasibility study exploring the costs of cutting carbon emissions generated by the public transport system. CGTN's Travers Andrews has more details.
Cape Town's 2 new electric buses are meant to assist the country reduce the carbon emissions from its public transport system. The fully electric vehicles were rolled out by public transport provider Golden Arrow Bus Services and have begun ferrying passengers. The company is utilizing the electric buses as part of a feasibility study, which aims to incorporate e-mobility into the business.
At the stage now where 2 of our depots are carbon neutral and we're exporting electricity back into the grid. So that kind of got us started on thinking, what else can we do to make ourselves sustainable? And obviously electric buses are the vehicles of the future. And so when the opportunity came along to partner with BYD and Uyilo e-mobility program to create a feasibility study on electric buses, we absolutely jumped at the chance.
The buses were manufactured in China by BYD and are near silent on the road. For many passengers, that gives them a far more pleasurable commuting experience. The buses are currently being operated on a hop-on, hop-off route within the city, but plans are underway to expand their testing.
In South Africa, there's no data at all on electric buses. So we're very different from a European or Asian market. Our needs, obviously, we've got issues with our power supply in the form of Eskom. There's no tax incentives from government to use these kinds of vehicles. They cost twice as much as a normal internal combustion engine. So the aim with the feasibility study is to create a study that shows all of the issues that we could possibly encounter.
But for now, Cape Townians are jumping at the chance of experience what public transport could be like in a clean and greener future. Travers Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
To Chad now, where the director behind Lingui, a Cannes Film Festival entry about a teenager's battle to get an abortion, says he hopes the film resonates with many people around the world. Mohamed Saleh Haroun says reading stories about babies abandoned or killed by their young mothers in Chad inspired him to create a film that touches on this thorny subject. Let's take a look.
Lingui, which translates as the Sacred Bonds, is a Chadian film that centers on a single mother named Amina. Amina is horrified after learning her 15-year-old daughter Maria has fallen pregnant. But despite being terrified at the idea of going against religious principles, Amina is eager to help her daughter Maria.
I'm also a young mother, and when the film shoot started, I had just given birth. My baby was 3 months old, so I could put myself easily into the role. And as a single mother, I understood how we struggle. I realized that this could happen to my daughter as well. So when I slapped her, I was feeling that it was my own daughter, and I was crying, she was crying. It was real. In the film, the tears were real.
Abortion in Chad is only allowed in specific cases where a woman's life is in danger. But despite this, there have been many stories reported about babies abandoned or killed by their young mothers in the country. The director of the film hopes to bring to light the different challenges young mothers in the world face regularly.
Speaking to women, it turns out that these are struggles they have been going through for so many years, but they don't talk about it because it's shameful, it's a taboo, so they keep it to themselves and they sort it out the best way they can. And as this issue affects a lot of countries today, whether it's in Latin America, even in the United States, there are people who are against it. in Morocco, everywhere. I think that this voice from Chad can also speak to other people across the world.
The film is vying for the top prize at the Cannes Festival. The director, Arun, has previously won distinctions in the competition and hopes to secure an award this time around. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Right, it's time for the sport. With 9 days to the start of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, South Africa's largest ever team is looking to improve on their medal haul from the Rio 2016 Games. Despite preparations being hugely disrupted by the global pandemic in the past year, the Rainbow Nation is optimistic they will challenge for more medals at this year's sporting showpiece in Japan. CGTN CS Duplessis tells us more.
Team South Africa certainly look the part with their stylish new kit sponsor, but looking good doesn't always produce results. That comes from preparation, execution, and big match temperament. The 250-member team definitely possesses ample amounts of BMT, and that's why the SASCOC president is confident of medals in Tokyo.
Look at Afghanistan the results in the 100 meters. So we are pinning our hopes on those athletes who come through. We're very disappointed with Casta, of course, but we know in our hearts that our athletes in the swimming pool and on the athletics track and even in the rowing stand a chance, and the rugby stand a chance of winning, and our thoughts and our pride and our passions behind them.
The mostly vaccinated team will be subjected to several tests before departing, but they'll all be eager to get to Tokyo and represent the Rainbow Nation with pride after a frustrating 12-month delay.
You know, it seems like it helped many of people to kind of reset and refocus. So I think we're in for great games. Unfortunately, we won't have spectators, but we are in the middle of a pandemic, so that's understandable.
All eyes will be on the reigning 400-meter champion Wade van Niekerk, who has had his fair share of ups and downs since blasting his way to a new world record, to see if he can indeed defend his title.
I think he's going to be a little undercooked in race preparation, but you never count Wade out. I think the guy's got a mental ability to rock up on the day and produce. He will hurt himself to get what he wants. He's not afraid to do that. We'll see him in the final, and then he's also got that white line mentality. He steps on that track and he's just going to absolutely push his body to the limit.
And without the likes of medal winners from 2016 like Caster Semenya and Livo Manyonga, as well as surfing star Geordie Smith, it'll be up to the usual suspects to bring back the medals.
There are the usual suspects like the Wade van Niekerk. He's battling with injuries a bit, but you'll never write him off. You've got a Kani Simbine, he's going to his second Olympics. Then you've got Chad Leclerc. I mean, it seems like he's kind of heading towards the last bit of his career. But he's one of those kind of classy kind of people that can produce the goods.
South Africa's best ever medal tally was achieved on 3 occasions: in Antwerp in 1920, Helsinki in 1952, and in 2016 in Rio, where the team claimed a total of 10. Expectations are high to surpass the previous best haul, and with motivation in abundance heading into Tokyo, there's every chance the team from the Rainbow Nation could indeed claim several medals well into the double figures. CS Duplessis, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, 3 Kenyan sprinters are among the latest batch of the country's team that departed for Kurume City in Japan on Tuesday, their last stop before traveling to Tokyo for the 2020 Olympics. Ferdinand Omanyala, Mark Otieno, who ran national records of 10.02 and 10.05 seconds respectively in the men's 100 meters in Nairobi during the Tokyo trials last month, were joined by national women's 400 meters record holder Helen Siombua. Kenya has been sending its team for the Olympics in bits as part of the strict measures in place to combat the spread of the coronavirus at the global multi-sport event. While Kenya is renowned for prowess in the distance races, the 3 left for Japan, eager to win the country's first Olympic medals in sprints. Now, Mbanyik Ndiaye is the only Senegalese judoka qualified to represent the country at the Olympic Games in Tokyo. Ndiaye arrived back in Dakar from France in June to continue his training with the National Olympic team. CGTN's Mohamed Abubakar tells us more.
Mbanyek Ndiaye is looking forward to his first Olympic appearance in Tokyo. The young judoka is now sharpening his techniques, aiming to reach his best form heading into the Games.
The preparation for the Olympic game is going very well. As you can see, it is very hard. We are giving the best of ourselves. The atmosphere is good. I train with all these people and they all support me. I have quality coaches, and by the grace of God, this will allow me to be ready on the day of the competition.
Ndiaye arrived here from France. I wanted him to be here so that we could have training sessions because I am the one who is accompanying him to the Olympics. We work a lot, especially on the communication between us during his fights. There are also some small details that we need to improve, but everything is going very well at the moment. The Olympic Games are the holy grail of the world sport, so it is not going to be easy.
Ndiaye qualified for the Tokyo Games by winning a gold medal in the men's over 100 kgs at the African Judo Championships in Madagascar last year. The victory moved him up to 26th in the world rankings. With expectations now high, he hopes to make a good impression in Tokyo.
I know that the Senegalese people and even all of Africa expect a lot from me. I am aware that this is the first time I participate in the Olympic Games, and I tell myself I'm going as an outsider. So I will try to go all the way and pass the maximum number of rounds possible, and why not win a medal, if God wills it.
Mbanyek Ndiaye's international career started in 2010 at the African Junior Judo Championships. He has since been 2 times African champion, once gold medalist at the African Games in Rabat in 2019, and 10 times Senegalese champion. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.